Welcome back, everyone. So today's episode is going to be the first installment of a new kind of like sub-series I'm going to be doing. So what's going to be happening is basically I'm going to go, or I'm aiming to go on exchange in about a year. So at the start of my third year, I'm going into second year right now. So the only countries I'm even applying for exchange are going to be Singapore, Japan, and South Korea, because I've been to a lot of places on vacation, but I've never been anywhere in or even really close to Asia, so I really want to go experience it once. So I'm going to be going for a full year, so I want to learn a language that would correlate with one of the countries I would go to, ideally my first choice. So this video is basically going to be me trying to figure out what language I want to learn. So to start off, let me just give you a little rundown as to what my programs are going to be looking like. So let me just over here. So I'm going to ideally put the picture up here. So first off, I have two options in every single country. So in Japan, I have two options. One, I need a minimum of a 75 average to apply to. The other one, it doesn't actually specify what kind of average I need, so I have no fucking clue. But that's the first one. In South Korea, both programs I can apply to need a 75, or not a 75, need a 70 average. And then the last one in both the programs in Singapore also will need a 70 average. So I'm honestly leaning more towards South Korea and Singapore because I think they'll be easier to get into, in all honesty. So that's kind of skewing my decision a bit. And then I also want to take into account how hard each language is to learn. So one of my friends who's Korean told me that in terms of difficulty for a foreigner learning the language, Korean's the easiest, and then Japanese, and then Chinese. So I'm also going to be taking that into account. And then the last thing is what place do I want to go the most. Like currently, what is my kind of like tier list in terms of, you know, country I really want to go do for exchange. So I'm going to put it up right here. So number 1 would be South Korea, number 2 would be Japan, and number 3 would be Singapore. So with that all being said, now what I want to talk about is why I'm actually making this video at all. Because I know, like, I do want to show you guys every part of this process, but I also figured I could kind of use this as a way to help decide, because I think I'm honestly going to be torn between most likely 2 languages to learn. That's where, if anyone really cares, comes in. Just kind of like let me know what language you guys think is probably best to learn. For, I guess, literally whatever reason, but I don't really mind. I'm just trying to look for some, I guess, like outside insight as to what language I should learn. Okay, so I want to just do a little like kind of mini pro and con list, just to give you guys an insight into what I think about each language. So first up, I'll just go in the order of that like easiest to hardest scale that I talked about earlier. So first up would be South Korean. That's not a fucking language. The first would be Korean, which would be the situation where I go to South Korea. Saved it. So a few quick pros are, 1, it's supposedly the easiest language to learn out of Korean, Japanese, and Chinese, so that's always a plus. Another one is that the programs in South Korea I'm more likely to get into. And then the last quick pro con is that there's a lot of materials to learn with. And the only con I have right now is that it's not very optimal for entrepreneurship, just because I think the entrepreneurship outlook in South Korea isn't as good as some of the other countries, because I also want to take into consideration how learning this language will actually affect like TN or just any like business ventures I want to have while I'm on exchange or in the future. So next up is Japanese. So next up is Japanese. Real quick, it's literally the exact same list as South Korea. Jesus Christ. It's literally the exact same list as Korean. Actually, I lied. It's not the same. It's kind of the same. So the pros are it's easier than Chinese to learn, apparently. And there's a lot of materials for me to learn because anime. The cons, however, are that the programs in Japan are the least likely that I'll get into. And then also, Japan doesn't have the best outlook for entrepreneurship. And then last up is Chinese. Chinese probably has the most different pro-con list, because when I'm referring to Chinese, I'm also referring to China in and of itself, but I'm referring to Singapore in the context of me going on exchange. And so also keep that in mind. So the pros are that it has a really good outlook for entrepreneurship and just business in general, because whether it be China has a really good outlook for entrepreneurship, like there's a ton of business to be done and a ton of money to be made, which is all good. And then also in Singapore is a really good hotspot for startups, because you know how the tax works there, you can kind of finesse your way through a couple of things. So that's really good. It's also more likely that I actually get into the program. And then another pro is that there's also a lot of resources to be used, because there's like Chinese dramas or comics, or even at my university there's a lot of Chinese exchange students, and I have a lot of friends that are Chinese that I can actually speak with, and they can help me learn the language quicker. So that'd be huge. Con, however, is that Singapore right now is the bottom of the 3 countries that I want to go to. Okay, so real quick, my level or my tier list for the languages I currently want to learn, they're all even. I really have no preference, because this is the way I look at it. Chinese is the best language to learn for business, which is one of the most important things for me. Japanese is a good language to learn because I just really want to go to Japan. And then South Korean is also level with them because that's the #1 place I want to go to for exchange. So it'd be the most likely that I'd actually learn that language. So I really have no idea what I want to do right now. But enough with that, let's get into the actual learning process and how that's going to be going. So just a quick overview as to what the process is gonna be for learning the language and how I'm gonna document it. So I'm basically gonna be following the way that a YouTuber named Ikena kind of like follows. So if you search him up, he's a polyglot. He speaks like 8 or 9 languages, I think. So this is the way he learns his languages, and he like wrote a book on it and everything. And so this is what I'm gonna be following for the next however long. So basically, to get to the proficiency level I want to get to, he splits it into 2 steps. So step number 1 is input, and step number 2 is output. So basically, it mimics the way we learn our first language as like babies. So the first, I guess like in this case, the first bit of learning the language for like I think like 3 months, 2 months, something like that, is just like called the input stage. So it's literally like listening, pretty much. Watching TV with subtitles, watching movies with subtitles, listening to music with subtitles. And then once I get to a certain level of proficiency, that's when you switch over to the output stage. So again, like mimicking how we learn our first language, you listen and then you just speak to people that speak that language, and they correct you over and over and over again, and then eventually you just get to the point where you don't get corrected anymore. But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below, and I'm gonna try and make the video on which language I'm actually gonna learn. I want to say a week from now, maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks, something like that. I want to do it relatively soon so I can start doing it, because I want to pile it up little by little, doing like half an hour a day or an hour a day, just to get in the swing of things and build a habit. Aside from that, as always, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, don't dislike, and thank you for watching.